Alrighty, how's it going everybody? Combo here. Today we have the initial impression tier list of all the weapons here in Season 7 of the Finals. I'm going to do my best to take this from a competitive perspective. I know typically we like to do these around kind of what the general player base is going to see. However, with the upcoming major and a renewed emphasis on the competitive aspect of the finals from both the developers and the community, I think it's important that we approach this from a more competitive lens and really show you guys what weapons are going to perform the best at the lowest and even at the highest tiers of play. So that's what we're doing here. Giving you a bit of context there. I'm going to quickly go over the tiers here and kind of what they mean to me. S tier, obviously, best in class, maybe needs a nerf. A tier, very strong. You know, I say kind of like the gold standard, where all weapons should be, in my opinion. B tier, pretty good. You know, there's probably a better option directly competing with it. C tier can be like the niche tier as well. Like these weapons can be good, but they need a specific playstyle or a lot of practice. And then D tier means this weapon needs a buff. You see there's no F tier because, in my opinion, the devs over at Embark do a fantastic job balancing all of their weapons. So in my opinion, there is no F tier. Anyways, guys, I'm going to quit yapping here in the intro. Let me know what you think of this down in the comments, as well as your opinions. Try not to fight. It's also the internet, though, so if you have to call that guy stupid, I mean, by all means, just know he probably doesn't care too much. Anyway, guys, I'm going to quit yapping here. Let's get right into the ranking. Alrighty, starting things out here, we have the 93R, and this did actually receive a buff in Season 7, going from 21 to 24 in the mag, which may not seem like a lot. However, this makes this weapon a hell of a lot more forgiving, and most importantly, makes it a lot better against heavies, which is where it struggled before. This thing kills lights in 2 bursts. It does pretty good, pretty good against mediums. It can actually duel them if you land your shots. Against heavies, though, you did always struggle. I genuinely think with this buff, we're going to see the 93R a lot more this season. I don't know why more people don't use it. The range on it is now better than the XP54. Not quite as good as the ARN, obviously. You don't want to challenge that. But once again, very powerful weapon. I'm going to put this in A tier. A lot of people might think I'm crazy for that. But I promise you guys, ever since this weapon came out, it's been slowly getting buffed. And it's only a matter of time before the community finds out, oh shit, 93 is actually pretty solid. And, definitely worth taking some time to learn. I know I've been a supporter of this weapon for a long time. I've dropped some of my highest kill games with it. This single-handedly took me through World Tour last season. Like, you guys didn't see me use it a lot on stream, but if I was sweating, this is the weapon I was using. So 93R, very powerful. Alright, next up we have the Dagger, and it's really sad, man. Melee as a whole has just been slowly getting neutered faster and faster over time. However, I'm going to put the Dagger in C tier. I think it's more niche than anything. What I'm going to do here actually as well, we're just going to come in here and we're going to add niche in C tier just to be a little bit more descriptive. Dagger's good. It did receive a pretty substantial buff not too long ago where you can actually backstab people, and even if you don't hit them with the backstab, you do extra damage, which did actually open up a few different kill combos, mostly on light and medium. Once again, on PC, this weapon is great. On console, this weapon's kind of not great, in my opinion. You're much better using the sword even after the nerf, which of course we'll talk about later. But the Dagger is not bad, once again, on PC, where you can flick around and backstab people. You know, the side stab is still in the game, where you hit people on the side, and it gives you a backstab. So if you're good at it, I'm sure you're a demon with this. But for the majority of the player base, there are better weapons that you could be using. So for me, I think C tier is a appropriate spot. Alright, next up we have the M60, or the MG60, I can't remember because I'm dumb. But nonetheless, this weapon also has been slowly receiving buffs as time has went on. I've seen quite a few people actually run this in competitive. I do think it's a pretty powerful pick. However, at this time, I do think the Lewis still kind of snuffs it out in just a few different ways. I'm very torn, like I don't know if I want to put this in A or B tier, but as it stands right now, if this weapon had just a little bit more range and damage at range, I should say, I would put it in A tier. However, I do think this weapon is still B tier, mostly because it's kind of in this weird middle zone where, like, at those closer ranges, you get beat by the Shack, right? At those longer ranges, you get beat by the Lewis gun. So maybe we'll see this weapon get a bit of a resurgence with the new gadgets that we've seen this season. This weapon has a ton of ammo, but even then, challenging the minigun with this weapon is kind of a death sentence unless you know what you're doing. So once again, with all the different weapons that Heavy has right now, this machine gun finds itself in a very difficult position. I don't know what Embark's going to do to fix it, but as it stands now, very middle of the row, not too good, not too bad, definitely a solid B tier pick. Alright, next up we have the LH1. This is very interesting. So the LH1 did receive a very small buff at the beginning of this season, right? So it went from 40 to 42 in terms of damage. And this is interesting because, as those who know who played in Season 5, LH1 was absolutely busted, by far the best weapon in the game, bar none. And since then, you know, Embark completely neutered it. I mean, I think they took 7 damage off it. So once again, very, very substantial nerf to this weapon. But as it stands now after this buff, I'm not entirely sure how much of a difference it's going to make. I'm going to stick it in B tier for now, only because, and we're going to talk about it next, the ARN has seen a huge increase in usage since the XP nerf, right? So if you can land your shots with the ARN, I mean, the recoil on it, especially on PC, is really not that bad. And once you figure out the recoil pattern on the ARN, you can challenge people, I mean, almost to like Pike range with that weapon if you know what you're doing. And that being said, the LH1 has so much vertical recoil. And another thing, you know, something like the ARN or the sniper or anything has on it, is at close range, that visual recoil that you're getting with the LH1 makes it very difficult to win those close range fights, and you're just, you know, you're at such a disadvantage against something, once again, say like the ARN. So with that being said, we'll see how this buff plays out. Maybe the healing gadget will somehow pair well with the LH1, and we see a big resurgence there. But as it stands now, I don't see this weapon being necessarily meta, but we'll definitely have to keep an eye on it as the season progresses. Alright, next up we have the ARN, and part of me was like, man, I don't know if I want to put this in A or S, but I do genuinely think, as it stands now, I am very torn between what is the best weapon on light, whether it's the ARN or the XP. I think at the end of the day, I think they're both some of the best guns in the game, by far. The range advantage you have with the ARN is fantastic, and then having the ability to come close range and still deal quite a bit of damage is just fantastic. I do wish they would maybe rework the quick reload function, that you could activate it at any time instead of having to drain out the magazine. But at this point, with where the weapon stands, that might be too much. That might be too much. That might push it over the edge. So I don't exactly know what they should do. But as it stands right now, ARN is stupid strong, and I do think it's one of the best in the game. And if you haven't tried it and you're stuck in your old ways, you know, with some of these other weapons on light, definitely give it a try, because this thing can put in some damage now. All right, next up we have the M11. Now this one is a, you know, for as long as this weapon has existed, it's been a close range powerhouse, having one of the highest base damages in the entire game at close range. Now, of course, this weapon is either going to get a lot more powerful or a lot more weak. And this is going to be kind of off topic of the weapon a little bit, but I want to talk about the current meta and how I see it evolving competitively. So we have a lot more healing gadgets in the game now, right? Which means, naturally, all these weapons, if you want, or all these gadgets, if you want to heal your team, you're going to naturally group up. It's going to be closer range. People are going to be camping inside doorways with fast time to kill weapons so they can counteract the healing, right? Because if you're doing long range gunfights and everybody has healing, that's going to prolong those fights, and nobody's going to kill anybody because everybody's going to be, you know, getting healed. So what I see happening, ARN being the exception because you can use it at close range, things like the M11 and the 93R are going to get a lot more valuable because they do a lot of damage, they're good at close range, they can still shoot at those longer ranges, but they can kill people before the healing can really like take full effect. Looking mostly at the light and the heavies new healing gadget. So these weapons that can kill people at those closer ranges very fast are going to get a lot more valuable. So in my opinion, M11 falls under that category. We'll have to watch it. I don't think it's as good as the ARN or the XP, just because the range is so hindering. But as it stands right now, M11 definitely a powerful pick, and one to be aware of this season. All right, next up we have the M26 Matter, and this one's interesting. I don't think it's quite as good as the M11. I think it's a little bit more punishing. I think if you know what you're doing, this weapon can be fantastic. There is a very niche player base that just absolutely swears by this weapon, and I can see why. I really can. I think this thing is quite strong. However, the ease of use is what takes it down, in my opinion. So if they want this weapon to be more powerful, maybe just giving it more rounds in the chamber, I think, could help a lot with that. Because once again, a lot of people, especially in those like multi-kill environments, if you miss one shot or you're not on target, this thing can be quite punishing, which is why, for me, I think it's a B tier pick. Once again, the burst damage on it is good, but not as good as something like the M11, for instance. So definitely a powerful pick, but I think you know, not quite on the same level as something like the 93 or the M11, but once again, let me know what you think about that one in the comments. Alright, next up we have the Recurve bow, and this one I'm going to stick in B tier. Now normally I would stick this in niche, however I have seen a huge increase in bow players, and the big advantage, and I said this before, is with the meta changing and shifting around these healing gadgets, or what I anticipate to happen around these healing gadgets, weapons that can be both powerful at close and longer range they're going to become a lot more powerful. And the bow on top of that does a ton of burst damage, so it checks all the blocks. The only issue, of course, is this thing's hard to use, right? The bow is not easy, similar to the sniper. You're also looking at travel time. Now, granted, the advantage the bow does have over the sniper, you know, you don't have to do a full draw, right? You can spam shots, you can do half shots if that means finishing a target off. So it does have that added flexibility, which once again, as we're getting into that close range meta, you know, having the ability to be good at both is going to be really powerful. So in my opinion, the bow for me has moved from C to B this season. Still not a meta pick by any means, but even in somebody who doesn't have the most experience with the bow, I still think you're going to see quite a bit of success with it. Alright, next up we have the double barrel, and this is basically the same thing I just said for the M11. Super powerful at closer ranges. The burst damage on this is absolutely unparalleled. This also counters melee weapons quite well. As we've been seeing, and we're going to talk about the next one here, melee weapons have been getting neutered pretty hard. So something like the double barrel, which was already a counter to those melee weapons, is only going to get better. Of course, once again, hey, the range on this thing is horrible, like worse than the M11, but its burst damage and its close range capabilities are so good that they more than make up for it. And once again, in a meta that's going to be dominated by healing, you can't exactly out-heal a one-shot. So that's always going to be powerful. Even I think at higher levels, this would be a good weapon to have in your back pocket, maybe for that final round, swap to it, and catch some people off guard. But once again, very powerful pick here. Alright people, we have reached the elephant in the room. We have the sledgehammer, and this thing got absolutely busted up nerfs this season. However, before, I think the sledge was definitely an S tier pick. A lot of people might call me crazy, but we're looking at this from a competitive perspective. Remember, the average player is probably just like, oh, sledgehammer, right? You just walk up and bonk people, right? People like the Chonk who are good with it, and they have fun using it. However, once again, I will admit, I do think at times, right, the sledge was maybe kind of a problem at those higher ranks. I'm not saying whether I think the nerf was justified. I found ways to play against it and counter it, but once again, for the average player who's playing against somebody who's really good with it, I can see why it was frustrating. So for me, a lot of people are saying, oh my god, the nerf, they ruined it, put it in like C or B tier. I still think it's an A tier pick for a couple reasons. I mean, once again, we talked about the burst damage options that you have. Sledgehammer can still one-shot lights. Of course, the kill combos got a lot more difficult against like heavies and mediums, for instance. But once again, the damage on this thing is still very good. And most importantly, right, what made this thing so strong at those higher tiers of play was goo and winch claw, pulling the cash out somewhere where it was difficult to access for other people, putting it in an area that highly favored the sledgehammer. And you guys got to remember, yes, the sledge got nerfed, but we got a shit ton more healing, and every class has access to it. So you're saying, oh, sledge got nerfed. I feel like Embark nerfed the sledge in anticipation for the fact that had they not done it with the new gadgets that we're getting, it would have been absolutely unbeatable, like 100%. So for right now, and I could even still see an argument for S tier, sledge is going in A. We'll see how the meta plays out. The healing also kind of counters the sledgehammer to an extent. So once again, we'll see how things go. But as it stands right now, for me, I think sledgehammer is an A tier pick. Alright, next up we have the SR84, or the sniper. This has been one of my favorite weapons all throughout Season 6 and Season 7 up to this point. I'm going to put this thing right at the back of B tier. Now, for me, and this sounds super arrogant, but fuck it, why not? I think for me personally, the bow, I mean not the bow, I almost said the bow there, it's funny. The sniper is an S tier pick for me, because I also use it very differently than most people. I don't sit back, I use it essentially like a slug shotgun, right? It's punishing, you guys see me on stream, I hip fire it a lot, I quickscope a lot, I'm in people's faces. I don't typically shoot this thing at more than like 40 meters because of travel time. So once again, I use it like a sledge or a slug shotgun, and I get in people's faces and I play aggressive. However, with healing becoming more prominent, The big reason that I used to love running sniper is because you can kill heavy in 2 shots. You can do a headshot and a body shot, which sounds hard, but heavies move really slow, and for me at least, you know, look at my streams, look at my clips, it is not difficult, right? 2-shotting a heavy with this thing once you practice is not difficult. However, with the uptick in healing gadgets, now I have to go from essentially a body shot headshot combo to a headshot headshot, which is gonna be difficult. I can't lie. Hitting 2 back-to-back is gonna be hard because, you know, you only get, I think it's let me think, doing some math in my head, I think it's like 390 is the amount of damage a headshot and a body shot do with the sniper. So they don't need to heal much, and they can cancel it. Even the healing beam back in the day could cancel that out, and I think we're going to see a big uptick in heavy players this season because of the close range meta. People want more health, people want weapons that do a lot of damage at close range. All those things favor heavy, and, you know, once again, if you're not using the sniper perfectly, and I mean perfectly in those closer ranges, you're going to get bodied. So once again, I think the sniper and the bow are pretty close this season, hence why I put it in B tier. I know that was long-winded, but this weapon means a lot to me, so I want to make sure you guys know. Alright, next up we have the sword. I'm going to stick this one right in B tier. I don't think this needs a ton of explanation. The sword nerf has still absolutely butchered this weapon, especially against things like sledgehammer, double barrel, throwing knives, you know, basically anything that does a lot of burst damage, which is the majority of what's going to be popular this season. The sword is just not very good right now. I feel bad for sword players. I haven't watched videos of it, but I hear there's a new sword tech going around that's making this thing pretty damn good. However, knowing Embark, it's probably going to get patched out, whatever it is. So I anticipate that happening and the sword going right back into B tier. It can be good. If you're good with it, you can definitely make it work. But as it stands now, not the best in the game, and I think B tier is a solid place for it. Alright, next up we have the throwing knives, and this is another one, man. The burst damage on these is absolutely bonkers, and if you're landing your shots, they're perfect. But I am going to stick them in B tier for a similar reason as to something like the bow, right? Not great at those super long ranges, quite good at medium and long ranges. Of course, being able to one-shot with the heavy attack on lights is very powerful. All you need is a body shot followed up with a body shot with a heavy attack, followed up by a full 2-shot land with the light attack on the throwing knives will kill a medium. It does struggle against heavies just a little bit, but once again, the burst damage on these are very good. However, once again, man, I don't know if it's just me, when you start missing with the throwing knives, you miss everything. And these are hard to use, you know, not as hard, or what am I saying here? These weapons are hard to use. Weapons like the SH1900 are naturally going to be easier. M11 is going to be easier. 93 is going to be easier. And, you know, once again, you're getting similar burst damage, at least on lights. And you also have hit scan capabilities. So, once again, throwing knives are good. I used them for the longest time. I still do on occasion. But I can't see myself putting them higher than B tier with a good conscience. So, as it stands now, this is how they stand. Alright, next up we have the V9S, and I'm just going to stick this right in A tier. For me, this is like the yin and yang to the 93R. V9S is a little bit better at closer ranges. It's like a close range 93R, but really the 93R is a close range V9S because the V9S came out first. But nonetheless, very good burst damage, good at closer ranges. If you're good at pacing your shots, all the way back in the day I made a quick tips video on this weapon. You can snipe with it. You certainly can. And if you have a good trigger finger or you have a macro on PC, also macro users, I hate you. Quit doing it. Quit macroing your freaking V9S. I know when you're doing it. But nonetheless, man, super powerful weapon, great at close ranges, fantastic hip fire. Also pairs very well with the cloak. If you're trying to go extra evasive, thermal vision goes very good with this if you want to run smoke grenades. So once again, very powerful weapon. I couldn't really see anything lower than A tier, so that's where I'm going to put it. Alright, next up we have the XP54. This did receive a nerf recently, but I'm going to stick this right in S tier. Now, you guys might think it's weird that I have the ARN and the XP both in S tier, but I do think these are both best in class. I think they're neck and neck. I do potentially see more use coming from the XP54, just because, once again, you do just have a naturally higher burst damage, and I think as people figure out this weapon again, right, Embark increased the rate of fire on this weapon by, I think it was 10 RPM in the last patch, not the most recent one, and a lot of people said, oh, it's harder to control this, that, and the other, but I mean, people adapt. Once they figure it out again, the burst damage on this weapon is still absolutely fantastic, so in my opinion, I don't see really a whole lot changing as far as this weapon's dominancy in the meta. But, you know, once again, this weapon and ARN go hand in hand. It's like the 93R and the V9S. One's good at close range, one's good at long range, but they're both fantastic all around. So let me know what you guys think about that in the comments, and if you would change where these two weapons are placed. All right, next up we got the AK. Now this weapon's pretty middle of the row, pretty good. I'm going to stick it right in B tier. I think this is a perfect starter weapon. I do think there's a better counterpart, which I'm sure you guys can probably guess what that is. The big thing with this weapon is just the recoil. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think it kicks a little bit too much. I'll never understand why Embark actually reduced the amount of rounds this weapon had. I think it had 36 at one point. They may have changed that, I'm not entirely sure. I just don't see this weapon at high competitive levels. I only see the FCAR. I don't know what Embark needs to do to buff this weapon. Maybe just, you know, increase the rate of fire slightly, give it slightly more rounds. I'm not entirely sure, but nonetheless, this weapon is very middle of the road, similar to something like the M60, and until Embark decides to do anything or differentiate it a little bit from its competition, I think it's going to sit right here in B tier. Alright, next up we have the Repeater, and I know Sanguine, if I don't put this anywhere higher than B tier, he's going to be screaming in his chair here, but nonetheless, right, I do think the Repeater is definitely an A tier pick. I remember last season when I did my tier list, I was like, oh my god, at 2 shots lights and 3 shots mediums, it's too strong, it's broken. But now that we've had time to play with it, we know this weapon is absolutely busted if you land all your shots. However, very punishing, and what really holds this weapon back is against heavies. It's time to kill on heavies unless you land a headshot is just not good, right? At the end of the day, it's just not good. I do think that if Embark were to buff it, it would maybe be too much. I genuinely believe this weapon is in a very good balanced state right now. It's punishing, it takes skill, but it highly rewards players who want to take the time to learn learn its ins and outs. To me, it's like a higher skill version of the Pike. I think you get a higher reward factor if you use it. We'll talk about the Pike later and how these weapons kind of like balance each other out in a lot of ways. But as it stands now, Repeater, very powerful weapon. I think very well balanced and a very powerful pick. Even in somebody's hands who hasn't taken a ton of time to learn it, you are still going to see value, so A tier pick for me. Alright, next up we have the Cberus, and this thing did get nerfed. It received a pretty sizable nerf, with the pellet damage going down by 1, taking it into the 90s, I think high 90s for the amount of damage it does. However, you guys might disagree with me, that's fine. I'm going to stick this thing right into A tier, even now, just because there's not a ton of competition with this weapon. The model is still garbage, in my opinion. You can have success with it, but the Cberus, even after the nerf, the burn damage is still fantastic. It still counters lights very hard, and it just does not take a lot of skill to use. I mean, let's be honest here, you kind of look in the general direction and spray this thing, hit your shots, and you're going to kill them. It's still a great counter to heavies on medium if you want that burst damage. It's essentially like a double barrel, but you have 3 shots, right? The burn damage more than makes up for the lack of damage that you're doing. And with something like the breaching charge that we're seeing, or the breaching drill rather, on the medium, you know, you may not even have to run something like dematerializer anymore if you don't necessarily want to. A lot of people will probably still do that because this weapon combo is very good with that. But once again, Cberus to me, even after the nerf, man, still a stupid powerful weapon, and I think we're still going to see a lot of people using it. But once again, let me know what you think in the comments. I could be wrong on this, but that's kind of where I see it now. Alright, next up we have the CL40, and I'm going to stick this one in B tier. This is where I'm going to get some flack from people who maybe don't play super competitive. I don't say that to be mean. I just genuinely mean it. This weapon is very easy to counter. I mean, at the end of the day, unless you're playing on light, and even then, there's quite a few ways. The big thing is just don't let... There's 2 things. If you want to counter the CL40, even if they're a good player, there's 2 things you got to do. Don't let them get distance on you, and, you know, stand close to them. Because, yeah, they don't do the same amount of self-damage. It's not like the over-multiplier that it used to be. But if you can damage a CL40 user before they can hit you, which just means you play high ground and they don't, of course, I know you can't always control those situations, just get in their face, do a little bit of damage, get in their face. 9 times out of 10, even the best players in the world will damage themselves and likely either lose the gunfight because of that or straight up kill themselves. So once again, CL40 is strong, and if somebody's really good at positioning and really knows what they're doing, and they keep high ground, they keep spacing, this weapon can feel very oppressive. However, once again, man, if you just know what you're doing and you're not afraid to get in their face, because this thing does have quite a bit of, we'll say, an intimidation factor, they can't do a lot. Like, they really cannot do much at all. So for me, CL40 is B tier. I could definitely see an argument for A, but at the end of the day, right, I think this one goes hand in hand with the sniper and the bow. Good weaknesses, or strong strengths, weak weaknesses, right? You know what I'm saying? So for me, B tier pick. All right, next up we have the dual blades, and with that, our first ever D tier pick for the list here. So yeah, dual blades are still terrible. The hit registration sucks. The fact that your swings are divided up into 2 hits sucks. The fact that you take damage while you're deflecting sucks. The damage isn't high enough. You know, the melee tracking can be nice, but once again, the Riot Shield is just better. Riot Shield is just better. I'm just gonna say it, man. I don't know what Embark can do to buff these. I've talked about before, like maybe a potential rework is doing like a perfect parry system. So as soon as you pull up your guard, if you deflect it, the shot you deflect does more damage, and you don't take damage. Think of, like, for example, like a parry, like Smash Bros, right? Somebody hits your shield, and you open the shield right as it hits, and you get less hit stun, and you can act faster. Kind of the same thing with this. Another one I saw that was interesting is, like, while you're deflecting, you essentially get, like, Bangalore's passive from, like, Apex Legends, where, like, you get shot at and then you move faster. However, once again, Embark doesn't seem to like melee too much, so I don't necessarily see that happening anytime soon. But either way, man, these need some help, because right now, in my opinion, worst weapons in the game. So, you know, let's show some love, Embark, please. They definitely need it. All right, next up we have the FAMAS, and this is a very powerful weapon. I could see a lot of argument for this thing to go into S tier, just based on all the nerfs, or the buffs rather, that it's gotten. And I think I'm going to do that. I think the FAMAS is still, it's fantastic at close range. The burst damage on it can be quite powerful as well. I mean, there's just a lot going for this weapon. And once again, for some reason, I have no clue why, Embark continues to buff it. And I don't understand. Like, I made a video not too long ago talking about when you put the red dot on this thing, the recoil feels essentially non-existent. And then Embark went in and they reduced the recoil, the visual recoil, even more. So now this thing literally does not move. It's fantastic at long range. It's so good at close range. You have no excuse not to hit headshots with this thing at medium range. Once again, at those higher tiers, go on to my streams and stuff, you know, we're landing full headshot bursts with this thing because it just does not bounce. I mean, it could be different on PC, right? I play controller, so I should probably make that known. But either way, man, FAMAS is super strong. If you want a weapon just to pick up and roll heads with, this is your pick. So for me, you know, once again, FAMAS, super powerful weapon. I still think the best in class, but let me know what you guys think. All right, next up we have the F-Car here. I'm going to stick this right in A tier. I think the F-Car, you know, to this day still, is the gold standard for balancing. Very powerful, especially if you land your headshots. Has a learning curve based on the recoil. Of course, I don't always like when Embark goes in and manually adjust recoil, because that's what they did with this one. That's why those rounds kick really hard in the beginning. But nonetheless, right, great tap fire, rewards skilled play, is all around good in just about every scenario. Maybe the hip fire is kind of weak, but even then, once you figure out that recoil pattern, you can just aim down sights and land headshots for days. This weapon does good damage, and I don't really have much to say. This is just a very powerful weapon. I don't think it's too strong. I don't think it's too weak, and Embark should strive to get more weapons around this this weapon's power. So for me, F-Car, definitely an A tier pick. All right, next up we have the model, and I'm going to stick this one right into niche. This might be a bit much because I have actually seen quite a few high-ranked players who can use the model and still find success, but man, this weapon is punishing. It used to be pretty damn good at like medium range. It was weird. You could like snipe with this thing if you wanted to. That has since went away for the most part, so not quite as strong as it used to be there. Inevitably, I do see this thing getting a buff probably this season, seeing as we did just see the Cberus get a nerf. Potentially we see this thing see more play. However, if I'm playing medium and I want more burst damage, this probably isn't the weapon I'm going to go to. Once again, I'm going to probably go for the repeater. Once again, just because the repeater is essentially a pre-nerf model that can shoot at even longer ranges. So because the repeater exists, it's really difficult for me to say, okay, yeah, use the model, because they do a lot of the same thing, and really the repeater just does it better in just about every way. And if you want a shotgun, once again, even after the nerf, you're probably going to use the Cberus. So until Embark does something, this weapon is going in C tier for me. But let me know what you guys think about that. Alright, next up we have the Pike. I'm going to put this one in D tier. A lot of people say the Pike's really good. It's actually really bad. The Pike's probably the worst gun. No, I'm kidding. We're going to stick this in A tier. Pike, I still think... A lot of people think it's too strong. I disagree. I still think it takes skill. Being able to 3-body lights, if Embark wanted to get rid of that, I mean, they could. However, this weapon has been nerfed and buffed and nerfed and buffed, and I think it's in a pretty decent spot right now. If you play light, yeah, you probably hate the Pike. But when I play medium, I hate the double barrel, or I hate the you know what I mean? It's like, this weapon keeps people honest, and I do think there's a skill factor that comes with it. It still punishes you if you miss your shots. Against mediums, this thing actually has a slower time to kill than the majority of the rifles on medium. So once again, if you want to win a fight against a medium, you have to land at least one headshot. You just have to. And you know, for a lot of people that may not sound like a lot, but you know, in a heated gunfight, especially close range, where this weapon really struggles compared to other rifles, I think its capability at those longer ranges keeps it more fair. And even then, at those longer ranges, you still get beat by the repeater in a lot of instances. The reason I'm talking so much about the Pike is because this is one of my main weapons, if not my main weapon in the game. So for me personally, I'm not saying it's weak, but I don't think it's quite S tier. I think the FAMAS still beats it out. Very similar to the FCAR. I think both of these weapons are very well balanced. But with that being said, unless your name's Jello, let me know what you think about this weapon in the comments. Alright, next up we have the R357. I'm going to stick this one in B tier, which might be higher than a lot of people would initially anticipate here. This weapon's good. Once again, you want to talk about unforgiving. This is like the unforgiving factor of the repeater cranked up to 10. However, this thing does actually do more burst damage than the repeater, other than the fact that you can't 2-body lights, which I hope Embark never does. As a side note, if they wanted to make it so you could 2-body lights, Embark, put the tracking dart back on the medium, so I can shoot a light and then one-tap him with the repeater. That was so, or with the revolver. That was so fun. Why did you take that away? And people would actually use the tracking dart, and you want people to use the tracking dart. So put it back on medium. Why did you get rid of it? Now every class has healing. Light is no longer the dedicated recon, so give me back my tracking dart. I digress though. Once again, 357, quite powerful weapon. If you land your headshots, the DPS on this thing is bar none, I would say. However, landing those headshots is easier said than done. It does have quite good hipfire, which is a huge advantage against something like the repeater, which has okay hipfire, but the revolver obviously beats it out. This thing is really good against heavies if you can land one headshot, but once again, man, going for those headshots, getting greedy with this weapon will really get you in trouble as you only have those 6 shots. You can do a reload animation cancel, which I showed off in my 357 guide, but either way, man, good pick, very punishing, very similar to the bow and the sniper, hence why we have it in B tier. Alright, next up we have the Riot Shield. I'm going to stick this one in C tier as well, in the niche tier. This is definitely better than the dual blades. However, once again, with the meta shifting to more close range, I just don't see this thing really making it anywhere out of niche. You can have success, and I think, funny enough, with the World Tour skin for the Riot Shield actually being in rotation this season, I think we're going to see a lot of Riot Shield. A lot of people hate this weapon. Once again, though, pretty easy to counter if you know what you're doing, and the best way to counter it, just run away, or shoot somebody else and then run away. Once again, if a Riot Shield player isn't good at moving, now if they learn how to run at you, like parallel or sideways, then it can be pretty strong. It can definitely be strong there. But as it stands now, once again, a niche pick, can be strong, wouldn't necessarily consider it anything better than what we have in B tier, but let me know what you guys think. Alrighty, next up we have the Deagles, and I'm going to stick these right into A tier. I think the Deagles are another example of just really good balancing. To me, these are essentially the equivalent of the Pike on the heavy, because you can snipe with these things. Embark even reduced the amount of range these things have at, like, you know, damage at range or whatever, and they're still so good. You can still snipe people with them. They're great at close range. I know Ezekiel, I think I'm saying his name wrong. I played a match against him when I was using the sniper, and you know, he could contest me at long range with the sniper using the Deagles. And once again, that's all skill, man. These weapons are not easy to use. You have to be able to hit your shots. They are very punishing if you don't. The hip fire is good, but once again, just really good in just about every scenario if you take your time, truly learn them. But even then, like, you know, once again, they are somewhat beginner friendly, and the skill ceiling on these is just, it's not even there. You can just keep getting better and better with the Deagles. So with that being said, for me, these are an A tier pick, and definitely going to be viable in this season, as they always have been since they released. All right, next up we have the flamethrower, and I'm going to stick this one in B tier. This is usually higher than I put the flamethrower. The reason I say that is because, once again, close range is getting more powerful. We're going to see, with this season, I'm anticipating, even after the nerf, I still think we're going to see a lot of sledgehammers with goo. And naturally, when you're fighting melee and there's a lot of goo around, you know, having something to burn that goo is going to be more valuable, especially with the nerf. And this is a huge one. With the nerf to the sledgehammer, you actually have a chance in a one-on-one fight with the flamethrower against the sledgehammer. Back in the day, right, if somebody was using sledge, you hit them with the heavy swing quick melee combo, they couldn't kill you. You would just win. But with the damage nerf now, I think it's going to be a lot more close, especially if you have somebody supporting you, since everybody has heals. So once again, flamethrower is getting a lot more powerful this season. I think we're going to see it more often, but as it stands now, we'll have to wait and see how the meta shakes up, but definitely not a bad pick. Next up, we have the KAS-23. We're going to stick this one in B tier. Similar situation to the flamethrower. Pretty dang good at those closer ranges if you can hit your shots. Very punishing though. This did receive a buff in Season 7, where now you can destroy walls quite a bit faster, which is good. However, Embark, you need to give this thing more shots. You just need to. If you're going to make it so like, hey, this weapon can destroy walls, similar to the minigun, it just has to have more shots. Because here's what happens, right? Okay, I need to destroy this wall. So I take 2 shots, I destroy the wall, and now there's a heavy on the other side. Well, now I have to hit all 4 shots and pray that nobody's healing him, or I just lose that fight. So this thing needs more shots. It's still good, especially if you do the Winch Claw Lock Bolt quick melee combo, which adds up to 50 if you were curious, which is enough to essentially one-shot lights, take a shot off heavies, but once again with healing, this is going to be even more rare, which kind of breaks my heart because I love the KS. But once again, we'll see. I do see another buff coming to this weapon, hopefully to its ammo capacity, but we'll just have to wait and see. Either way though, not a terrible weapon. I would stick it in B tier. Next up we have the Lewis gun. I'm going to stick this one right into A tier. I think this is a better version of the M60 because, once again, yeah, the M60 might beat this thing at closer range, but even then, at those closer ranges, man, Lewis gun is still so close to the M60 in damage that it's not even close, and this thing absolutely kicks the M60's ass at those longer ranges. So for me, the damage on this is great. Another added bonus that you have with the Lewis, and something I didn't mention with the FCAR, is the tap fire on these weapons is great. So if you want to poke people at long range, you can definitely do that. And in modes like Ranked and World Tour, where you're getting money for those kills, this is invaluable, right? Being able to pick across the map and steal a kill potentially may not sound like a lot, but in close games, that could be the difference between a win and a loss, especially if you get lucky and get a team wipe. So once again, very powerful weapon. I would say pretty balanced overall as well. I don't think it's too strong. So for me, Lewis gun's going to be an A tier pick. All right, next up we have the minigun, and this one's really hard for me to put. I think I'm actually going to stick it in A tier, which is a huge buff from where it was before. However, this weapon has seen quite a few improvements. Once again, guys, as we're talking about these close range engagements, you need weapons that can close the gap, do a ton of burst damage, and now, as of Season 7, the minigun breaks walls even faster. And once again, guys, once you fight against the minigun, especially if somebody's pocketing them and healing them, once again, you can have a heal beam and a light shooting them at the same time. You are indestructible. The only counter to this is going to be a sniper with 2 headshots, which you can do, and it's pretty damn easy. I just uploaded a short today. You can actually do that, or I did that actually. Pretty easy to do because you are moving slow with the minigun. But other than that, man, this thing, I'm telling you guys, you are going to see, with all the healing, you are going to see a shit ton of minigun this season. This thing is going to be strong. I almost debated putting it in S tier, but at the super high levels, it might still be just a little bit out of the, outclassed by other weapons. But once again, definitely going to stick this one in A tier. Super powerful pick, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it this season. All right, next up we have the MGL. I'm going to stick this thing right into C tier. Once again, very niche pick. Honest to God, guys, I don't know how Embark can buff this. If you give it direct explosion, so you shoot somebody, and it's a direct impact, it explodes, that could probably be too strong. Because once again, this thing can do some crazy damage and some crazy splash damage. If they were to do that, maybe they'd nerf the damage on it. But as it stands right now, we have some people who are just absolutely, like, think Andrewstown, who are just so good, or Truce, that are just so good with this weapon. Also Maggie, one of my subscribers, he's pretty damn good with this thing. You can do good with it, but once again, let's be honest here, guys. Something like this compared to the Deagles, right? You can have success, but it's not going to be your primary means. It's definitely fun, but I would not take this thing to a major tournament and put money on the line, as funny as it might be. So for me, C tier is the pick, but let me know what you guys think. Maybe there's some people out there who can persuade me on this one. Alright, next up we have the 1216, and this one's pretty interesting. I'm going to stick this one right into A tier. Once again, this weapon, even after the nerfs, the burst damage is still quite good on it. You do have to be right in somebody's face, but with the nerf to the sledgehammer, this weapon just got even more valuable, more than it already was, funny enough. So for me, once again, this weapon's quite strong. I don't see a ton of argument for anything outside of A tier. Once again, talking about that close range meta, man. Being able to pocket somebody using this thing is going to be very powerful. And once again, just this weapon's been good forever. You know what I mean? For as long as this weapon has existed, it has been good. And that's no exception this season. I would say A tier in a heartbeat. So let me know what you guys think about that. All right, next up we have the Shack 50. I'm going to stick this one right in S tier. A lot of people are like, Combo, are you insane? I still think the Shack is the best weapon on Heavy. It's so forgiving. You have to try, and I mean absolutely try to miss shots with this thing. It does this. It's like a shotgun at close range. At medium range, it's so consistent. Long range, you can poke people because you shoot 2 bullets. So good luck missing, even at those longer ranges, even if you don't do a ton of damage, right? Having the ability to poke and just not even have to really worry about your aim is just crazy to me. The burst damage is great. It's great at close range. It counters the FAMAS. It counters the XP. It counters the ARN, unless we're talking at longer ranges, of course. But in a meta that's going to highly favoritize these close range engagements, but still have wiggle room for those in between gunfights, maybe at like a cash box. This weapon is just so strong, man. Especially compared with Winch and the healing we're gonna see. Once again, we already see a ton of Shack, and I think we're only gonna see more. So for me, Shack is going to be an S tier pick. But let me know what you think about this. Did I rate it too high? Did I rate it too low? You tell me. And then finally, we have the Spear. And I don't know what it's doing to my screen right now. I'm going to stick this one right into C tier. If this was Power Shift, right? If this was a Power Shift list, this would be S tier, 100%. But generally speaking, the Spear is very niche. Similar to the Dagger, I think, and the Riot Shield. Are there some people who are really good with the Spear and can just run lobbies? Oh, fuck yeah, 100%, man. But for the average player and a tournament setting, is the Spear... Are you going to choose the Spear over the Sledgehammer even after the nerf? Some people will say yes, and I respect you, right? You're cool. But most people are going to say no. Sledge is still better. It can break walls. It can terraform the environment. The Spear is really good at Power Shift. Let me tell you, it's really good at Power Shift. But unless we see a buff, the big one, the big buff I want to see, is you need to be able to cancel the heavy attack, right? I'm glad that Embark made it so you can loop it, but that's kind of a double-edged sword because sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I just looped it again, and now I'm stuck in this big twirly animation, and I'm getting like freaking beat up by like 3 lights with a double barrel, you know what I mean? So once again, if they do that, I could actually see myself putting this weapon in B tier with something like the sword, but as it stands now, this thing needs some love. Don't know what that would be. Maybe you can throw it. I had an idea, like kind of like Charge and Slam. If you jump in the air, you could pin people to the ground and like stab them with the Spear. Maybe make it do headshot damage. I don't know, man. Either way, though, this thing needs help. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. All right, everybody. With that being said, that just about concludes our list today. Once again, I'm pretty happy with this. I don't really see myself shifting anything around. Of course, I want to hear your guys' feedback on this because this is a collaborative process, right? So put your best argument as to why I'm an idiot in the comments, and I would be more than happy to talk with you, and we can chat about your perceptions and kind of what we think about this in the future. Expect a gadget tier list coming out soon because, once again, we didn't get any new weapons, but we got plenty of gadgets, so we'll talk about that next. Anyways, guys, hopefully this video was fun to sit through. Maybe you put it on while you were driving somewhere or while you're taking a crap, man. I don't know. Nonetheless, though, this has been Combo. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully this helps you choose next season, or this season I should say, what weapon is going to carry you through World Tour and Ranked. But once again, these are just my opinions, so keep that in mind. I'm just one guy, and everything here is obviously going to be skewed from my perspective and the perspective of a controller player. Alrighty, people, this has been Combo. Stay home, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out, everybody. Later.